Welcome everybody online in front of your video monitors. We are going to start in 1 minute with our 5th webinar on mental health and psychosocial support. I'm just waiting for our last participants to log on, and then we are ready to go. I hope you're all able to see and hear properly, and that our connectivity to the different countries that are joining us is good. I'm just waiting for our last participants to log on, and then we are ready to go. Just give us 1 more minute, and then we are ready to start our 5th dialogue today. Great. It seems we are all managing to log on. Perfect. Let's get started. Welcome, ahlan wa sahlan, Hosgeldiniz Birk Serhati, to our 5th session of the Qudra 2 Resilient Art Dialogue that will focus on the question, can we provide quality mental health and psychosocial support to all who need it? This is part of the response to the crisis in Syria and Iraq. My name is Eba Augustin. I am the CEO of a company that supports philanthropy in the Arab world and founder of the Arab Country Facilitator Network. Together with Sami Hourani, I have the pleasure to lead you through the series of web-based dialogue for practitioners on challenges and successes in the response to the crisis in Syria and Iraq. This meeting will be held in English, Arabic, Kurdish, and Turkish. And you need to click on the little translation button in the bottom bar of Zoom to select your respective language that you would like to follow. Let's have a closer look at the agenda today. We are starting with a kickoff, then go into our panel discussion in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. We will have a plenary discussion after the panel discussion, where all of you are welcome to join, this time also in live stream. We will have a short summary, thank you note, and close at 4:30 as shown on the screen. Before we start with our panel, just briefly, we want to do things slightly different, as I already mentioned in the brief introduction. This time, contrary to the last webinars, we would like to give you, as our audiences, a chance to contribute live. So when we come to the Q&A part of the webinar, as just shown, please do raise your hand if you have to make a contribution or ask a question to a panelist. However, we would like to encourage you during the entire webinar, please share your questions and comment in the chat during all parts of the meeting today. Before we start with our panel discussion, some housekeeping rules. For choice of language, click on the icon in the bottom bar. For questions and comments, please use the chat interface on your Zoom screen. We would encourage you again to actively participate during the panel discussion through your chat. Comments and questions will be selected and referred to by the panel moderator during the expert panel. And then when we come to our Q&A part, please participate also in the live chat. Please abide by online etiquettes and netiquette. In case you have any technical issues, please send an email as it is on the screen to contact@taimani.com for any assistance you require. Please note that the meeting will be recorded. We are in recording mode right now. For the welcome, I would like to give the floor to Martin Linden, who is a dialogue coordinator of Qudra 2 program. Please, Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ebba, and a very warm welcome from my side. My name is Martin, and as Ebba said, I'm the dialogue coordinator of the Qudra 2 program. So I have the pleasure of facilitating the series of resilience dialogues, of which today we have the 5th session focused on the very important question, can we provide quality mental health and psychosocial support for all? I just want to say very briefly something about the Qudra program. We are a large, complex program operating in the countries bordering Syria, working to promote resilience of communities and administrations affected by the crises in Syria, but also Iraq. We are a European initiative in that the program is funded by 3 European donors, the European Union Trust Fund, Regional Trust Fund in response to the Syrian crisis, the Madad Fund, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. And the program is also implemented by 5 European implementing partners from Belgium, France, Germany, Hungary, and Spain. We work in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. And as part of our efforts to promote dialogue within and across the region, we have set up this series of dialogues, the resilience dialogues, that address 3 questions in essence. What are the real challenges in the field? What approaches work to address those? And finally, what does that mean for future support to the region? I will not, and I cannot say much more about today's topic because our panelists are uniquely qualified to speak to that. I just want to thank all of them for taking time out of their very busy schedules to share their insights with us. And I look forward to a very productive discussion, and I can only echo Ebba in encouraging everybody on the line to contribute to the discussion through chat, as well as then hopefully also through the Q&A session at the end. We do have a technical issue with one of our participants, so we hope that we can resolve that in the next couple of minutes. Speaking about stress today, I guess that's always one factor in these kinds of online meetings, but I hope that we will be able to resolve that very quickly. So thank you for coming, and I hand back over to you, Ebba.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Before we start our panel, I would like to introduce you to all our panelists, and I sincerely hope that all of them have managed to overcome the technical issues that bugged some of them. It's a pleasure to have Ekin Dallar with us. He's a psychologist and program coordinator with the International Blue Crescent in Turkey. He has been working since 2014 with GIZ as a psychologist in Turkey. Dr. Aziz is a psychologist also from Malna Community Center in Iraq. So he will be able to share with us experiences specifically from Iraq. We have Andalud Lasso, welcome, head of the department and MHPSS and protection specialist against Action Against Hunger from Iraq also. And last but by no means least, Dr. Michel Maragel. He's a clinical psychologist with extensive experience with Syrian refugees, specifically in Lebanon, researcher and PSS consultant based in Lebanon, from where he also joins us. Welcome to all of you. The panel discussion, and here I would like to give the floor to Sami Hourani. The panel discussion will be moderated by Sami Hourani. He is a medical doctor by profession, but also a social entrepreneur, a multi-talent, and an excellent facilitator. You are in wonderful hands. Sami, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eva. Actually, it's my pleasure to moderate today's session discussing mental health and psychosocial support with great speakers today with us. Also discussing the question, can we provide quality mental health and psychosocial support for all who need it? So just start with I'll start with a small introduction, and then we will go in depth with our dear panelists. So the needs here are very significant. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 5 persons affected by displacement suffers from mental health. Mental health and well-being are intimately tied to the broader crisis in the region. For example, a recent poll conducted in Lebanon showed that 75% of the respondents are experiencing stress multiple times a day. So the needs are immense. How are we responding to those needs? MHPSS, or mental health and psychosocial support, covers a broad range of interventions, from clinical mental health interventions to sports and even recreational activities. We know that accessible specialists, psychological and psychiatric services are in very short supply in the region. So we have to look beyond these and see how we can provide kind of services that local communities, by drawing maybe other resources, including maybe the communities themselves. This is what we want to discuss with our distinguished panel and participants today. And I want to underline the participants today because we will have the option for people attending the session today to participate and speak with us in the Q&A session, or even participate through the chat by commenting and asking questions throughout the session, and we will be taking those questions and comments to the panelists. To frame today's discussion, I want to briefly discuss the concept of the MHPSS with our panelists. So we're gonna discuss what is it, and then zoom in and dive into the lessons learned and the successful approaches. Before we go into the session and to our panelists, I would also, how we have been doing it for the past couple of Qudra sessions, start with a kickoff poll. So to start this poll, we will ask 2 questions, and I would love to have our audience participating with us. I will start with the first question. We will have around 15 to maximum 30 seconds to answer it, and then we'll get the results, and then we go into the second question. So the first question: is MHPSS a useful concept in Syria crisis response? Which statement of the ones that I'm going to tell you right now you agree with the most? So you might agree with 2 of them, but you need to choose which one you agree with the most. Yes, MHPSS, it's currently applied, is the useful concept to address the variety of mental and psychosocial needs that our communities face. So this is A. B, yes, but there is a risk that it becomes too broad to meaningfully address the mental health and psychosocial support needs that communities face. C, no, MHPSS only obscures the significant unmet needs to specialist services on mental health and trauma in the region. So we have 15 seconds. You can choose A, B, or C. As you can see it, most likely you will get to choose right now. The poll is in front of you. And as I can see it, hosts and panelists cannot vote. So it's only for our attendees. So the the question again, is MHPSS a useful concept in the Syria crisis response? Which statement do you agree with the most? Yes, it's currently applied in a useful concept to address the variety of mental health and psychosocial needs that our communities face. B, yes, but there is a risk that it becomes too broad to meaningfully address the mental health and psychosocial support needs that communities face. C, no, MHPSS only obscures. Right, so the results are 71% goes with B, which is yes, but there is a risk that it becomes too broad. So from that answer and C, it seems that no one agrees that it's not a useful concept. So agreeing that it's a useful concept, but it needs to some prioritization. We will go into the second poll, which is, in your view, what is the most promising route to address MHPSS needs in the region? You might agree with many of those statements, but you need to choose the most promising to you, of course, in your opinion. So A, expand access to non-specialist care through government institutions and or community initiatives. Expand access to specialized clinical services. Expand access to MHPSS material through apps and social media or media. So here we're talking about media and IT. Invest in referral cooperation mechanisms between specialists and non-specialist services. E, address the root cause of MHPSS needs, example, livelihood. Or F, other. So this you can share through the chat if you don't see any of those statements as the most promising route for you. So we got plenty of choices from A to F, and we have 30 seconds to go. So starting from expanding access to looking at the root causes of MHPSS. We'll be still waiting the results. Which one of those statements you see the most promising to address the MHPSS needs in the region? Okay, so E, 55% of the audience with us today see that addressing the root cause of MHPSS needs, we need to look at the root causes. So before we go into the palliative symptomatic treatment, it seems that 55% of our audience wants to address the root causes to those problems. 18% agrees with A, and another 18% agrees with B. So we're talking about access to the clinical services or specialists and non-specialists. With those results, I'm going to move to our panelists. And here I'm going to start. We're going to start by a nearby country. I'm currently residing in Jordan, so I will start with Lebanon with Dr. Michel Maraja. Welcome to the session, Dr. Michel.
Hi, Sami. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you for having you with us. I know that you're a psychologist and you're a PSS trainer based in Lebanon. We're very excited to hear from you, but keeping in mind that we want to answer the question whether we can provide quality MHPSS services for the ones who need it. I want you to just to give us in less than a minute, just like an introduction about the MHPSS in general as a concept, and then look how we can provide quality and what are the risks to the concept and what are the advantages or the strengths.
Yeah. So first of all, what is MHPSS? As you said, it's a concept that was basically created by the Interagency Standing Committee, right? So it's something that was created relatively recently as a term, as a concept. And it was developed for emergency settings and to allow recommendations to be done at different levels of intervention. So an MHPSS intervention can take many forms depending on people's needs and on what services are available. One major component of MHPSS is often the treatment and prevention of psychiatric disorders, PTSD. MHPSS can be a problematic pathogenic disease-based model where often, especially if we're talking about refugees, it's the trauma story that is the focus. And which means we end up seeing refugees as sick, dysfunctional, and unable to govern themselves. So issues that are social and economical become medicalized. So notions such as MHPSS and diagnosis such as PTSD,
Dr. Michel, it seems that
especially when what is observed, yes.
Yeah, we were not just, there was a bit cutoffs in your speech. So maybe we would love to see you, but maybe we'll try if we do it without camera and see if it's better, because there was a lot of cutoffs in the sound.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. No, you don't need to be sorry. Yes. So
okay.
Sorry, I cut you on when you were talking about the services, and if you want to go into the quality, and are we able to provide with all the needs that we have? And you've mentioned the refugees and looking at the trauma that refugees mainly are having after the crisis. Do you see that we're able to provide quality MHPSS services in Lebanon and maybe in the region for the ones who really need it?
To cut straight to the point, it is extremely difficult to offer quality services to everyone, especially if we keep functioning according to the current framework. So if we're talking about specialized services, for example, the current framework doesn't really allow that to happen in the way that it needs. For instance, we can offer 12 sessions of therapy, but that's barely enough for the process to get started in a context where trauma is a constant and the daily challenges are immense and almost non-stop. And that sort of thing happens mostly because of funding concerns versus what can be done. We see there's a big conflict at this level. And when it comes to satisfying basic needs, for example, we also often miss the mark. It's very difficult for donors or project implementers. But where do we succeed most? Where does it work? It works when we focus on the social support aspect of MHPSS. The fact that when the beneficiaries see that there is someone interested in them, there is someone who is recognizing their pain, who is trying to help them on a field level, on a day-to-day, on the ground level, that is, according to my observations, what helped the most. And this is what can be focused on because it doesn't need much in terms of funding. The funny thing is that we usually, donors usually focus on things that have a lot more visibility, like 200 awareness sessions. But what I observe is that even when it comes to things like awareness sessions, which can be an important part of an MHPSS intervention, the real important aspect of it is the connection that can be built between different beneficiaries and the social workers, and so on. So it creates a setting where they can benefit from positive feedback, positive regard, and that sort of thing. And this is really where things happen in the best kind of way. So yeah. MHPSS seems to be a problematic concept in a lot of ways, yes, but it still does offer something extremely important.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree on the impact and the importance of the MHPSS actually. But going back, I mean, you mentioned the funding, the high demand. Is there any other challenges to the idea of us being able to provide quality? So some people talk about, for example, the issue of having enough specialists. And the differentiation between having, for example, a psychologist or a psychotherapist and a psychiatrist. And there's, when you look at all the numbers, you find that there's a scarcity when it comes to the number of psychotherapists and also psychiatrists, but even it's a bit worse when it comes to the number of psychiatrists. So do you see the services that's needed being maybe addressed by less specialized, or maybe some training might solve the supply side of things?
Obviously, as you said, yes, there is a terrible lack regarding specialized workforce. I do believe that lay workers, non-specialized workers can offer great quality of help and support, but it depends where they are situated. When it comes to specialized services, obviously, there is a big part of the population that will not receive the services that they do need. But if we focus on a community level where most people do not need specialized services, but still a lot of people, especially in Lebanon today, for example, most people need some type of help getting through the day. At the community level, if we figure out how to do it correctly, which I think we still haven't, not properly. I still think there's a lot that can be done in this regard. But when we focus on developing agency for that population, we can really help them help themselves. And this is, I think, will be the real key to quality at a large level.
Well, I would like to thank you, Dr. Michel. Actually, I wanted to move to Dr. Aziz from Iraq, and till now, we still did not get him with us. So we'll see. We're expecting him at any moment if the technical issues got solved with him. But I would maybe also ask Endel. So Endel from Turkey, if I can bring you to the discussion. I'm not sure if I can see you.
I'm here. I hope you can hear me and see as well.
Yes, welcome to the session, Endel. We're really thankful for your time, and I know that you work with Action Against Hunger in Iraq and recently completed a project that promoted access to MHPSS services. And that was from different levels, whether the Ministry of Health down to the community level. So, and we were discussing with Dr. Michel about the importance and our ability to provide quality services in the region, and our ability to supply the immense demand, and what are the challenges that we have, and maybe what are the advantages. So if you can reflect on this from your opinion, from your work in Iraq.
Thank you, Sami, for the chance. Maybe before I go to explain what our experience looked like in Iraq related to strengthening the MHPSS system, I would like to reflect a bit on Dr. Michel's point. It's true that it's really at this stage difficult to accommodate all the needs at community level, due to the lack of all the qualified specialized staffs. But one of the big thing here, always MHPSS is taken from the perspective of high level of distress or like very high level of MHPSS concern. So there are issues that can be managed within the community. There are topics that can be managed at family level. So if we are able to strengthen those exercises, the amount of individuals who will go at psychiatric level can be reduced, and that can benefit the overall system and the community. So this is in fact one of the learning that I might say later on. So the activity that, or the project that, maybe to give you a bit background about the project that we completed, which was funded by EU Madad, and I think it was implemented for 2.5 years, which was based on a consortium approach between 4 organizations, including Action Against Hunger, PUI, IMC, and HI. The logic of this project starts from, as you mentioned, starting building capacity at Ministry of Health level, and it goes to at Directorate of Health level, and it goes to PHCCs and districts and at community level. So it tried to align all the level of the system in a way that which will help us to increase access to quality mental health service. Picking some of the strengths of this exercise is, especially when we take the approach that we implemented, it tried to give an ownership for them, for Ministry of Health, DOH, and PHCCs. So as though we do have a kind of budget ownership to implement the activities, but ideally the way that we implemented start by integrating and agreeing with MOH for them to take the responsibility to do their own business. So our role was to do the TOT training, then cascading will be to be done by MOH by themselves, to support them in developing guidelines and tools, then cascading and monitoring to be done by MOH themselves. So interaction with the community, involving community-based organizations, and at community level awareness through face-to-face radio, television are part of the activities that are included. So when you see these kinds of approach, it creates demand, especially the awareness at the community level. With well awareness, then the MOH by themselves will have the capacity to train and to supervise their teams. So we try to make a kind of holistic approach in a way that it will help, at least for the system, to benefit from itself. Yeah. But the challenge is quite a lot, though. Some of the challenge, for example, I wouldn't say it as a kind of weakness, but a kind of challenge. In some PHCCs, basically our approach was to integrate MHPSS within the primary health care center and in some of regional mental health care in a quality way. So currently, for example, some of the general practitioners and doctors have more than 100 medical cases per day. So entertaining MHPSS issue become like luxury for them. So they just give only 10 minutes for medical and they don't have time to deal with the MHPSS topics. This is one of the significant challenges that you could see, which lead to commitment and other challenges. Beside that, even if in the policies and in the strategies that the ministries clearly highlighted, they would like to integrate MHPSS within their primary health care, but there is no clear budget. The job description of the healthcare providers is not clear enough as to the role to include service for MHPSS and things like that. At community level, also there are a lot of challenges. I mean, it was been mentioned several times in different platforms. Stigma is one of the challenges. Like, for example, family members are not willing to send individuals to receive mental health service. So they hide the case because of the stigma and the other related concern. And when doctors and nurses, I mean, when doctors prescribe medication related to MHPSS, psychotropic medication, when the individual go to a pharmacist to buy them, like there are also negative feedback that they are receiving from the pharmacist. This is mental health issues. Are you crazy? And such, because this pharmacist also is not trained on such things. So it needs a kind of holistic way to make sure that the community in general to receive proper MHPSS service in general. But of course, also as best practice or as learning that I could mention, there are very committed and passionate healthcare providers who are trying to train themselves in addition to the training and the supervision that they have been given, at least to learning that this is one of the case that making their life is very difficult. Because one of the doctor, for example, if I take the way that he said, there is one patient who came that health facility for more than a year. But after the doctor received the training, he is able to identify his problem and support him in a way that at least you can solve the problem. So such kinds of very practical lessons that you can find from the field, which was a good strength that I can mention. But also the commitment that is very much important in general, I assume, to provide quality service to all the community that they need. Maybe saying this, if you don't.
Yeah, I will definitely go back to you, but for the sake of time, I will be moving to Akin from Turkey, and we're going to look at the challenges, and I will maybe go back to you with recommendations, and if there are other things. So I don't want to disappoint you that if there's stuff that you wanted to say, we will get the time for that. But having Akin from Turkey, and still we don't have Dr. Aziz, so maybe we will have him during the coming couple of minutes. So let's turn to Turkey. Hello, Dr. Akin.
Merhabalar. First of all, thank you very much to give this chance. May I express my feeling in Turkish for the terminology? I feel comfortable to.
You want to speak in Turkish?
Teşekkür ederim.
Sure. Let me. Akin, he works at the International Blue Crescent and supports a range of MHPSS interventions in Turkey. So, we have been hearing about the challenges and also the risks and the ability for us to provide quality MHPSS services in the region. We still will go back to Lebanon to Dr. Michel to hear more about some of the recommendations and maybe some of the examples that we have currently successful. But before that, how do you see it? What is the situation in Turkey? What are the challenges? Do we have similarities with what Endel had said? Do you have a different situation?
Şimdi öncelikle teşekkür ediyorum bu şansı verdiğiniz için. Benzerlikler ve farklılıklar mutlaka var. İnsandan bahsediyorsak. Ben 2012'den beri bu programın yürüten kişi olarak şundan bahsetmek istiyorum. Başlığımızda 2 tane şey çok önemli. 1, kaliteli; 2, herkes için. Öncelikle genel bir konsepte biraz bahsedip ne yaptığımıza anlatacağım. Kaliteli olması demek 1, uluslararası standartı refere eden ve aynı zamanda kültürel adaptasyonu içeren bir hizmet sunmanız gerekiyor. Herkes için derken sadece yararlanıcılar değil, aynı zamanda ve çalışanlar için de bu hizmeti sunmanız gerekiyor. Çalışanların iyilik hali de aslında kaliteli hizmet sunmanızı çok etkileyen bir süreç oluyor. Süpervizyon sistemi kurmanız, zor vakalarla nasıl baş edeceğinizi kurgulamanız, personelinin kapasitesinin geliştirmesi gerektiği de bu projenin parçalarından bir tanesi. Bir Suriye krizinin başladığı 2012'den bu yana bütüncül bir yaklaşımla MHPSS ve psikososyal destek çalışmalarını kurguladık. Bu sadece psikologların verdiği hizmetten öte çocukların, yaşlıların, engellilerin ve herkesin ulaşabileceği bir psikososyal destek konsepti yaratmaya çalıştık. Aynı zamanda faydalanıcıya bizim dolaylı olarak ulaştığımız özellikle iletişim anlamında fark yarattığımız radyo programlarımız var. Burada çözüm noktasında faydalanıcının size gelmediği, sizin ona ulaştığınız dolaylı bir hizmet sunmanız gerekebilir. Bazen bu bütçenizi etkileyebilir. Fakat bazen okay.
If you can a bit slow down for the translation to catch up with you.
Okay, thank you. Şimdi psikososyal destek çalışmalarında faydalanıcının size gelmediği ama sizin ona ulaştığınız belli kararlılığı yaratmanız gerekiyor. Kaliteli hizmet için yararlanıcıların bu bütün özellikle savaş travmasını, depresyonu ve belli tanıları sizin tanımlamanız gerekiyor. Dolaylı olarak yaptığımız çalışmalardan daha çok bahsedeceğim. Biz daha fark yaratan radyo programlarımızda biz özellikle Türkiye'nin güneyinde Gaziantep merkezde ve Suriye'nin kuzeyini ve o bölgeyi yaklaşık günde 10.000 kişinin faydalandığı bir yayınla özellikle psikologlarımız tarafından belli bir rutinde programlar yapıyoruz. Bu programlarda özellikle COVID döneminde de bilgilendirici faaliyetler, bu program içerisinde psikososyal destekle ilgili önemli içerikler paylaşıyoruz. Programın içerisinde kendi doğrudan hotline'larımızı veriyoruz. Böylelikle faydalanıcılar aslında bu servise nasıl ulaşacağını öğrenmiş oluyorlar. Aynı zamanda COVID ile ilgili bilgilendirmeler yapıyoruz. Aynı zamanda faydalanıcılarımızın buradan belli bilgileri dolaylı olarak aslında bu başlık bir anlamda önleyici ruh sağlığı hizmetine giriyor. Dolayısıyla bu da çok kıymetli bir hizmet. Bunun yanı sıra özellikle yerel radyolarda, gazetelerde, dergilerde, hatta ve hatta Kilis ilindeki Güneydoğu'daki gazetelere de ilan sayfamızda hotline'larımıza ulaştırmaya çalışıyoruz. Bunun yanı sıra tabii ki de dergili yayınlarımız oluyor. Farklı dillerde bunları ulaştırmaya çalışıyoruz. Broşür dağıtımlarımız oluyor. Burada kaliteli hizmetin sunmamız için öncelikle bundan özellikle bahsedeceğim. Hepimiz yararlanıcı gözüyle bakıyoruz ama personelin kendini geliştirmesi, süpervizyon sistemleri kurulması için de önemli bir ayak. Hani orada çalışanların iyilik hali de aslında programın kalitesini etkileyen önemli faktörlerden bir tanesi. Geleceğe dönük de ben şunu sadece bahsetmek istiyorum. Çok özür dilerim böldüm ama Covid dönemi bize ne öğretti aslında pandemide? Covid döneminde biz uzaktan psikososyal destek hizmetlerimizi çevirebileceğimizi öğrendik. Eğer bir ilde hizmet sunuyorsak ve başka bir ilde engelli bir birey size ulaşamıyorsa aslında belki de siz bu hizmeti ona götürebilirsiniz. Örneğin online sessionlarımızı nasıl kurguladığımız, onlara nasıl ulaştığımız ve online desteklerin engelliler için çok iyi bir hizmet olduğunu fark ettik. Biz bunu cebimize koyduk. Pandemi bitse de gelecekte MHPSS servisi remote olarak nasıl yapılabilir? Bu alanlarda neler yapabiliriz düşünerekten bu hizmet kalitesini artırabiliriz diye düşünüyorum.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Akin. I mean, looking at the comprehensive and holistic approach and the tools that the International Blue Crescent has been doing to involve the Turkish community, I will take maybe two questions that actually related to what I wanted to go back to Dr. Michel Marajer from Lebanon. So, which goes back to the quality and the importance of quality, and the question from Chiara, and she's saying that, for example, as quality can be difficult to do. I mean, is there any other alternatives, like, for example, health awareness, community awareness activities? Can it improve? Can such a thing improve the quality? So just maybe let me read the question. As quality can be difficult to ascertain from your experience, are there any good ways to evaluate the quality of MHPSS interventions, such as Michelle's examples of awareness raising activity?
Thank you, Sami and Chiara. So the point that I was trying to make with the awareness activity is that obviously an awareness activity, especially when it has to do with mental health issues, can be very important. But a key quality component, I believe, in such a thing is the quality of the social support that can be offered during that awareness session, for example.
Yeah.
This is one point. Another point that can help us determine quality is to see how much what is being offered is actually corresponds to the expressed needs of the population and isn't coming from someplace else. And when that sort of thing happens, when it's not imposed because this is what someone believes is what is needed, then we can easily observe a form of synergy that will take place where the interactions will be different, the feedback will be different. It will be very clear that we are responding in a way that the population actually needs. That makes a big difference, I believe. So going from to not use kind of to not become a bit too academic, but trying to have some sort of post-colonial kind of aspect to these things can be extremely important. Not using too many concepts like PTSD, for example, when it doesn't necessarily apply to this specific population, even if they are under bombs and in a war situation. A concept such as PTSD might not be what is needed to apply. So we need to see what the culture uses to understand mental health issues, and from that basis kind of develop tools specific for the population to be able to evaluate what is going on.
Yeah, So, I mean, you're talking about localization, like localizing or tailoring the tools and the approaches, even the methodologies, to the culture and to the locals, to the people who really need it, instead of putting such terminologies on them. And associated with awareness was the issue of stigma. And there was a lot of debate on people are not seeking the mental services because of stigma. And some of the, I mean, and here there's a comment or even a question from Ribaz Ali, who in that scheme where he asked, how do you find solutions when religious and social beliefs that are prevent beneficiaries from accessing services? And here social beliefs basically stigmatizing. Sometimes religious beliefs says that, you know, just go back to religion and you don't need to seek such services. So how do you comment on that?
Well, what I believe is that, so obviously this is a very big challenge. It's not an easy thing at all. In my experience in Lebanon, there are two things that help, especially over time. First is the focus on offering services for children, because a parent might say, this is not for me, this is for insane people or whatever. But when it comes to offering services to their children, they might think about it twice and three times and say, okay, maybe this is within the context of a school, for example. Maybe this is in the best interest of my child, so I will try to be a bit more open-minded. Another very important way to tackle the issue of stigma is to find community leaders. Also, in my experience, when you get, for example, the local priest involved and organizing activities around the church, for example, that will change the discourse pretty quickly. That will allow people to say, okay, but if my religious leader is supporting these aspects of care, then maybe I need to do something about it as well.
Yeah, so maybe changing the tools and basically, don't you think, I mean, this is, I mean, is it really happening? Like, are we involving the priests or the sheikhs or the imams in our awareness activities when it comes to psychosocial support to mental health?
Well, in my experience working in NGOs in Lebanon and
Sorry, I think I lost you, Dr. Michel. Sorry.
Project. Yes, this does happen. It doesn't happen. It happens at small local levels, not necessarily.
Sorry, Dr. Michel, I'm very sorry. I think I lost you. I cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
I was saying that in my experience, yes, it does happen, but it usually happens at small local levels. It's not or you hear me. I hear you very well, but you cannot hear me.
It has
now
been,
it's better. Okay.
Yeah, it's cutting off. Yeah. So what I heard from you that it happens on specific incidences, and not on a large scale, on a small scale, according to your experience with the NGOs in Lebanon, right? I think we lost Michael. Okay. So also we have Farida from our dear audience. She's saying that I agree with Dr. Marajil in the sense that in some countries, PSS content is prescribed upfront and do not necessarily address the real needs. So it just comes from the sky as parachuting, basically. And the presence of individual social workers and psychologists down the line is instrumental in ensuring adequacy and quality as a consequence. So here she's stressing on the idea that we still need social workers and psychologists on-the-demand level. So before we take too long and getting into elaborating into the challenges, I would like to go into the recommendation side of things. And I think yeah, still getting some interpretation issues. Yeah, but till we get Dr. Michael, let me yeah. And before jumping, so maybe Ekin, is Ekin with us still?
Evet, buradayım.
Yeah, yes. Do you think you would be, we had an issue with interpretation when it comes to getting it on time and so on. Do you think you can participate with us in English?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be, I know it's a bit uncomfortable, but yeah, I would love to hear more from you on the Turkish example and the success story that you have done in Turkey with the International Blue Crescent. And I want to zoom into more into the methodologies. How did you do it? How did it work? Like, tell us more success stories.
In Turkey, for the success stories that I just only mentioned, that the previous I listened to you, that during the radio station, you can reach the beneficiaries that to tell some things that, for example, a beneficiary cannot feels that he's in depression. But if you tell some symptoms from the depression that you can underline, he says, okay, then I need help. So for the prevention, social, mental health, for the good examples, you can reach the beneficiary by the indirect ways. For the future, another issues that I mentioned, for example, if you are in Turkish course, for example, if you get a surveys, psychological test, very simple surveys to the beneficiaries that you can define their maybe illnesses, weaknesses, or another psychosocial problems. So surveys is really important. How we define the needs by the surveys. This is a good example from Kosovo World War, that after that people didn't define their traumas. But after the surveys, they are defined as 19% that yes, this is the trauma. For these issues, especially for the war traumas, you must do a lot of surveys for the beneficiaries. So really, it's really important. That in the beginning of the talks that yes, cultural differences is really important. But maybe for the surveys in Turkey, for example, we need Arabic version of psychological tests. So, but that may be really international standards. For example, there is a back depression test. It's one test, but you just really need to apply the Arabic version. So this is affect quality. So just need is to more coordination between the cultures and also psychological surveys. Our good example is in all holistic approach, we are applying all psychological survey to the all beneficiaries, for children, for the parents, for another courses we have community centers, we applied psychological surveys. Another tools that we use that remote supports to the beneficiary for the another region or underserved region. This is really important that we, for the localization, we can convert our services with the mobile services. For example, we implement a caravan to the camps. The caravan go to the camps and for a daily, so they visit the camp. So they are doing surveys to the beneficiaries. We get collecting the results, and then yes, you need psychosocial support, for example. We must mobilize the services to the beneficiaries, I think. Just not only implement one community center, you must reach to the rural areas. You must give remote support maybe to the rural areas. There's a lot of camps near the Skidis, for example, but we mobilize the services to this camp.
Yeah,
we have also mobile caravan.
Talking about mobility and access, and I mean, sometimes also some restrictions because of that. Do you see the social media and the new technology help you to maybe reach some more people,
Yes.
maybe give access to others? Can you reflect on
Yes.
that?
Yes, it really helped us. For example, we also work with Afghan refugees now. We just maybe Syrian refugees use another tools, for example, Facebook for the radio station, but Afghan use TikToks, for example. If you define, it depends your tools, it really helps you to reach the beneficiaries. This radio station, for example, I think audience more than 10,000 audience estimated, for example, for the daily. So if you just give your hotline numbers is enough for them. You can just tell them, okay, you can reach this number to us. So it really help you to prevent some things about psychology.
Yeah. Well,
but for the future, I think pandemic COVID-19 enlightened us in some ways that you must do remote support in some cases, not all, for the beneficiaries.
I want to ask maybe a similar question to Andel in Iraq, and maybe the idea of stigma, and maybe we also we have a saying that men don't cry. So there's, you know, when it comes to access for mental health for men, it's a bit more challenging. So, you know, looking at, I mean, if you can reflect on that, and also reflecting on the use of technology and mobile applications to maybe address or reduce the barriers there. And then we'll move to the recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Sami. Maybe one of, as it was been already reflected, the stigma which comes usually from cultural and religious perspective is one of the things, even that limits males not to cry. In Iraq, if males cry, he will be considered as weak. So it will not be entertained for a male to cry. So they need to keep their emotion as much as possible. This is cultural things. So, and maybe to give one practical assessment example, we did recently an assessment, and the primary path usually people prefer to seek for MHPSS service is through religious leaders. Most of the people first will go to these religious leaders, and then when things get a bit difficult, then they look for another opportunities, another options. So in my opinion, the best way to address such kinds of stigma and other related topics is awareness. The one that has been mentioned previously is one significant, but also working closely with this key individual is something very important. In fact, that is one of also our project tried to achieve through. So we were been training religious leaders, community leaders, key person within the community, at least for them to understand, and in a way that this is also that can be managed scientifically and to balance the expectation. Above all, also, MHPSS is not only related to like a health aspect, it can be also integrated with multi different kinds of approaches. So within schools and other activities, which will help to reduce the stigma, and it can be helpful to manage things accordingly. I think this is what I think.
Going back to the tools, I mean, do you feel that, for example, yes, I mean, changing the perception on that crying for men or for males is not weaknesses, or it's not considered a weakness, but maybe sometimes providing a private tool to seek the service. So, for example, there is well-known mobile applications like BetterHelp and other international psychosocial support services that can do it privately. So don't you see this as an opening in the region?
Frankly speaking, this is not something in Iraq we are exercising very well by my knowledge so far.
Is it accessibility? Is it too elitist? Is it the internet penetration?
I mean, one, in terms of accessibility, still, unless it is very few organizations trying to prepare such online service, there is something very significant so far I knew which is exercised. So I think one is in terms of accessibility, but of course also this MHPSS service seeking behavior is too weak. As I said, yeah, males will keep as it is, and of course also other community members is not in a position to provide the support. So people will like to achieve another way of maintaining their health rather than looking for proper service. But I could consider that could be an opportunity that can be exercised to provide quality of access, especially for those who will be open to discuss and in need, because it will give a kind of privacy. But as an individual who is like working as an MHPSS person, we tried to work remote service during COVID. That was also one of the significant. People don't usually would like to talk unless they trust you, the real feelings. But it is better something rather than nothing. So I would see it from this perspective as well, that which is also a good opportunity.
You don't see it as the most qualitative, but you would see at least, you know, better than nothing. So with that, I'll move to the recommendations, and then we will open the floor for discussion from the audience. So I'll go back to my panelists also with more questions from the audience, and maybe continuing some discussions on specific things. But for now, I would like to ask the nice thing that Dr. Michel is with us. So I just want to make sure that he's with us. Dr. Michel, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. So with having Dr. Michel with us, so let's go to the recommendations. And we have been talking a lot about the challenges, about the issues that we're facing, maybe some success stories, best practices. But if we want to focus, all of us, on specific recommendations, what needs to be done? And here we need to not to go into a general thing, like, for example, improving the psychosocial support services. No, looking at maybe concrete recommendations. Sometimes it can be one sentence that can be taken to a donor agency to be implemented to answer the question that we are tackling today, which is, can we provide quality MHPSS for all who need it? So I'll start with Dr. Michel with providing us with your recommendation very concretely, and that will go to our local stakeholders, the donors, and the international organizations who are implementing such activities that hopefully in the future. The floor is yours, Dr. Michel Maraj. Hello.
Very concretely, very simply, it's a very big thing to actually put in place. It's the idea of social connections, in the sense that it's should be done in just to be in the same way that Ndale was meaning that MHPSS services offering these MHPSS.
Yeah, I can barely hear you, Dr. Michel.
The idea has always to be about building communities, building a bond between a social worker and can you hear me? You cannot hear me.
Now it's better.
Can you hear me?
Now,
No,
yeah.
You cannot.
Yeah, you were talking about building the
Okay. So
yeah.
So in the same way, Ndale was talking about having MHPSS services incorporated in other aspects, that social dimension should really be the focus of every single MHPSS intervention, of giving people positive feedback, connecting them to each other, helping them develop a community so that they can become actors, taking care of themselves, and not be
Yeah, I'm barely hearing you. So I hope we did not lose Dr. Michel. Okay, let me move to Dr. Ekin Dalar with his recommendation, and hopefully it will be better with Dr. Michel when it comes to the internet connection. So Dr. Ekin, your specific concrete recommendation for the session.
For Turkey issues that the different, I can give the example. Yes, increasing the capacity of staff, especially for the NGOs, the workers or psychologists. Also for Turkey cases, increasing capacity of translators, because in Turkey we give the psychosocial support by the translators, so that the translators is also important issue. Increasing the capacity of translators is very important. You must give more trainings to them. Then also maybe converting or changing the way of reaching to the beneficiaries. For example, social media, as radios or TVs or podcasts, as we discuss in the future. Maybe it's NFTs, we just talk. Why we can implement any just in the new technology ways to implement these services. Just I can give. Maybe we can design set of podcast for the beneficiaries for all languages. Another issue is within all works that defined or refers underline international standards. This is really important for us.
Well, I will take it. I have some questions on the recommendations, but I'll take it to the Q&As with you, Dr. Ekin. Your recommendation, and we will be back with discussions on the recommendations, but let's hear from Andel and from our audience. And
there is a question. I think that this caravan, there is a question for the caravan in Turkey.
Yeah, we will take it in the Q&A. Yeah, I saw it from Chiara. Yeah, is it for data, only for data, or is it also providing the service? We will take it in the Q&A. We still have around 25 minutes. So Andel, yes, with your recommendations.
I have thousands that I will focus on here.
Very specific.
Yeah. So maybe one of the significant recommendation I could mention, in fact, partially it was reflected by Michel, is making sure that MHPSS is mainstreamed across different sectors. So in education, in health, or in gender, or in protection. So in this way, I think we could have a chance to scale up the acceptance as well as the service provided for large community members. Beside that, one significant recommendation that I could suggest, especially usually I'm working on strengthening the system. So integrating MHPSS in the curriculums of higher education is something I usually recommend. It could be a curriculum training of general practitioners or doctors, or in a curriculum of teaching of teachers, or across the different pillars of the higher education system systematically. If we are able to integrate, I think that would significantly bring a capacity to provide and improve access to quality MHPSS service. The most significant recommendation that I could mention, especially we need to work with like key influential people within the community. We need to look a way to involve religious leaders, cultural leaders, key community members that will influence or manage the behavior exercise of the community, working with them, training with them, engaging them, and also helping them to balance the religious thought with the scientific thought could be one of the significant recommendations I could suggest. But of course, for donors, considering the holistic approach in general, making sure that the system to function by itself, which require a lot of budget, something that I would recommend, like some of them. Yeah, over to you, Doctor.
Well, with that, thank you, Andel. I will Yeah, so we have, I'm going to read Michel's because he just wrote his recommendation. So he said, the point that I was trying to make was that when implementing whatever MHPSS intervention, always focus on building social relations, offer positive feedback, and allow communities to build so that they can support each other, gain agency, and take care of their own needs, which would be much more gratifying for them if kept in a passive, if kept in a passive position. So yeah, so thank you, Dr. Michel. So he's mainly saying that it's more into the local community empowerment rather than external support, or in addition to the external support. So now it's the time to open for Q's and A's, questions and answers from our audience. As we said, for the first time, you will be able to talk with us in the Qudra Resilience Dialogue. So we will start by raising the hands, and then we will allow you to speak. We would like to have some rules. So if you can mention your name and the country, your profession, and your question or comment directly. So yeah. So till I get if there are hands, I have a question from Kiera to Dr. Ekin. Yeah. So as we said, so I'm going to take that question. Then also I have a question from Martin. So the question is, for the caravan in the rural Turkey context, are they used for data collection only, or also for providing, for example, roaming services by psychologists based on the survey findings? So if you can just answer us quickly, Dr. Ekin, and then I'll take the question from Martin.
Not only it's just data collection, this MHPSS team includes case workers, translators, 2 psychologists, and also 1 social worker, so that just only do the survey and give psychosocial support in the rural areas. It's not only just data collection. Thank you.
So it's more comprehensive. I hope that answered you, Kiera. The floor is yours, Martin.
Yes, I will abuse my privilege of being part of the organizing team and maybe also break the ice. I think it's particularly interesting, this notion of working with, let's say, local influential community leaders, and looking at that with respect to what Michel shared, and the importance of building social relations, offering positive feedback. And I was wondering if our speakers, or maybe even also other members of who are in the call today, have any concrete experiences in how that works. What are some of the challenges in engaging with those kind of local leaders across the different contexts? That would be really interesting for me. And yeah, I think we're not blessed today with the technology, so I'm sorry about that, but I hope that we can still close this discussion on a good note. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So that's, I think, has been an important discussion where, you know, talking to role models, having the community leaders, to the religious figures. So I would take, Dr. Michel, he's with us. So what is your intake on that, Dr. Michel, on Martin's question?
Well, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so obviously it's a challenge. Obviously, it's very difficult. Getting buy-in from these religious and community leaders is very difficult, and it takes time. Something like that should be planned over a significant amount of time, building towards getting them to take that sort of position. And most importantly, it needs to be done in some sort of public way, which is usually the biggest challenge, because behind closed doors, in a meeting, in an office, they will tell you, yes, yes, yes, whatever you want, for whatever reason, either because they believe in it or because they can benefit from whatever project will be implemented. Yeah. Getting that buy-in is definitely the most difficult aspect. within a context like Lebanon, where there's so many different key figures, it's not one single religion, that can be especially difficult. Voilà.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So the point is getting that feedback.
The buy-in.
Yeah, getting the buy-in is especially important, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No worries. But is there any success stories? Like, did it? And if not, maybe if not in Lebanon, maybe in Iraq or in Turkey. Like, do we have like a system where it worked? Any lessons learned? Because we see this as an important approach, and having the buy-in of the local leaders and especially the religious figures to make it easy is something that will make MHPSS easier and more accessible and even doable.
So successes so far have been at small level communities. In one single tented settlement, for example, where the shewish or the religious leader there will take on a much bigger role and allow us to offer our services in a much more comprehensive way. Or within one village where one priest will allow us to use the church, for example, and offer services there. On a larger scale, though, that is where we still have challenges. That is still where we have not gotten the buy-in that we need.
Yeah. So, Akin, yeah, I see. So just the raising hands is for our participants to ask a question. So this is just to remind our dear participants that you can click raise hand in order to speak, so we can get you. Yeah, but let's hear from
an example.
Dr. Akin.
I don't feel I have a lot of example, but yeah, I'm here.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I have one example that a lady loses his wife, but the religion, she has a trauma, but she says that I might ask you my religion leaders, but our psychologists reach these beneficiaries that yes, I respect your religion, you lose your wife, but we are waiting 40 days, and then after 40 days, sorry. But after it's finished, I'm here. But after daily basis, sometimes, and our psychologists send SMS. Are you okay? We are here. Whenever you want to come, we are here. It's indirect way. Because this will be sometimes enough, and 41 days come to our community center.
I heard most of it, Dr. Akin, and yeah. Also, we have another question, another participant, Omar Yunus, who is also who's raising his hand. Omar, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Yes, please tell us where
are you from?
Yes, we can.
تمام. أنا والله في عندي سؤال بصراحة، يعني بالنسبة إحنا خصوصا من تعرف منطقة الشرق الأوسط، إحنا دائما بنحسه زي كيف أحكي لك بالموضوع الصحة النفسية، يعني بيستخفوا في خصوصي برضو اللي يعني أنا بحكي عن حالي مثلا، أنا مشخص بالADHD، يعني أتوقع المعظم أنتم دكاترة وأنتم أدرى مني بهذا المرض اللي هو Attention Deficiency Hyperactivity Disorder. فللأسف يعني ما خصوصي مثلا بالعمل كذا، للأسف ما باخذه على محمل الجد. فأنت برأيكم شو ممكن السياسات أو ممكن نعمل فعاليات انه مثلا نوعي مثلا بهاي الامراض، هل انه فعليا هاي امراض جديه وفعليا انه تاثر على بعض الناس في شغلهم في حياتهم وما الى هنالك. وبس هاي، شكرا.
Yeah. Thank you, Omar. So I'll take so Andel. I think it's a Middle Eastern issue, so maybe I'm not sure where Omar is from, but I think you heard the question. So he's talking about like the priority level and so on. Did you hear the question, Andel?
Maybe I will reflect, and if there are
Yes.
some missing points, it can be addressed by other panelists as well.
Other speakers. Yes.
Now, I think the question that I do understood is, it's true that the attention given by authorities or by concerned body to provide quality service for the people with MHPSS need is very limited, which is lack of attention to this service. In fact, taking some of the written documentation or the strategies that has, for example, in Iraq, there is clear policies and strategies that clearly highlight MHPSS to be part of the service that the government to address to its citizen. But the problem, if I mention it, it is very, very forgotten topic, even if it is written in the different policies and strategic document. But like, for example, there is no clear budget to achieve these MHPSS policies in the ground. So that is one of the advocacy that we are working. There are other priorities, and it's still there is a kind of gap to understand that there is no health without mental health. There is a budget for general health, but within that MHPSS is still reflected, but nothing clearly highlighted that how this policy can be implemented in the country. So there were like some focal points from the MHPSS group trying to convince at higher level there should be budget, but it was been like pushed back significantly. So still it needs a lot of advocacy to address this big topic. If I take like one quick number, in Iraq, that was reflected in the strategy that 95% of the cases that need MHPSS support is not receiving the service. Imagine that this is building and creating significant challenge. So this should be a topic that needs to be advocated strongly. Yeah, that would be my.
And also, when it comes to maybe one of the things that we can see that it's not also looked at as a priority, because it's also when it comes to private insurance, it's not included. So, so for example, major depression, they don't see it as major as a heart attack. So, which the suicidal attempts associated with major depression might be higher than sometimes heart attack. Anyways, so also we have Ribaz Ali with a question or maybe a comment. He says that I believe that media agencies have a role in changing social thought, and this will help to accept PSS in more flexible way, in addition to social leaders, of course. So he looks that that the media agencies and maybe mainstream media and social media has to do with changing the perspectives and making it easier for the mental health and psychosocial services to be addressed and to be provided. So I would like to take, I don't see any other questions from the audience, but I would like to have a final thought, 1 minute for each speaker, just, you want to do it a recommendation, final comment, an advice, and I will start with Dr. Michel from Lebanon.
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to, regarding Omar's question and its applicability to the Middle East, I would like to simply underline the fact that everything that Andale said definitely applies to our current situation here, especially the more intense the crisis becomes, the more secondary it becomes, and the more secondary mental health issues become, which is very, very sad. Even in NGOs who are working in delivering mental health services, they are not being offered the necessary mental health care. So even at this point, there's a very interesting kind of lack of congruity. you are offering these services, but your staff themselves are not really benefiting from them. So if that is happening, we need to really wonder how much we integrated these notions into the work that is being done. Is it just something that we are offering without really understanding it, or what is really happening? And that's an open question.
Final sentence, Dr. Michel.
Well, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Dr. Akin, like a final sentence.
Thank you very much. Just to give the for the social media, is really important. We didn't pay any radio station. It's doing what volunteer pays. After this program, their audience are increasing. So
I can barely hear you.
Yes, this is really important.
Yeah.
So we must maybe improve another tools to reach the other beneficiaries. Just only the second point that after the pandemic, HPSS services is really become more important to the refugees and also host communities.
Yeah.
So it.
I will
for the Turkey issue.
Yeah.
So really the needs are increasing.
Thank you, Dr. Akin. And Del, with literally like less than 10 seconds left. So one final sentence.
Okay, so strengthening the system could be one of the best way to respond to MHPSS service, because whenever some emergency happen, the system can respond by itself. So building the system, strengthening the system could be the final suggestion that I could provide. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Ndale. And I would like to thank my panelists and the great ladies and gentlemen attending with us today. And with those final thoughts, I would hand over the floor to my colleague Eba. And thank you very much. With that, we conclude the 5th Resilience Dialogue, Qudra 2 Dialogue on mental health and psychosocial support. The floor is yours, Eba. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sami, and thank you so much to all of our panelists. Apologies again that somehow somebody has been sitting in our internet lines, but at least I think most of the points got through properly, and there's always a report where luckily our colleagues have been listening in, and we're also able to fill in some blanks. So we have covered on a very interesting and very relevant topic quite a number of points. We have looked at the concept of MHPSS. We have looked at lessons learned, at the importance to also concentrate and build knowledge and awareness on the community level. We have looked at the human resources and their scarcity, the importance to build up expertise and to support people that are already working in their field with capacity development. We have looked at the important issue of stigma that is coming in from on numerous occasions and is actually hampering people to come forward and seek the help that they need. We have looked at the importance to take a holistic view and to mainstream MHPSS across the most important sectors that people that are working with in refugee communities are confronted with. We have looked at very interesting entry points, for example, to support services for children, to also reach out to adults. We have looked at the importance also to bring in leaders and community members with outreach to the community, be it a religious figure, be it community leaders, be it people in the community with expertise that is highly valued. We have tackled the issue of gender, the huge gender gap that is there. We've looked at IT and also at the use of social media and other tools that could potentially bridge some of the capacity gaps that are there. Just in a nutshell, some recommendations. You mentioned strengthening the system, to have a focus on social dimensions as a key theme to also strengthen resilience and support from within the communities, neighborhoods, and family outreach. We have looked at NGOs, the need for staff to receive capacity development. We have looked at mainstreaming of MHPSS across the sectors, as I already mentioned. So quite a number of really interesting issues that have come up. To close, today's session will be documented in a short report and provided to everybody who has already registered on the website of the Resilience Dialogue. The website will be posted again in the chat, so you can access it and make a copy. The final session of the dialogue will take stock of the discussions that have taken place over the last 5 dialogue sessions, including this one, and hopefully also bring in the perspective of donors and partners, government. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank the panelists for their expert input. Thank you so much for all the participants to listen and participate and brace also some of the internet difficulties. We hope to see you in the last and final dialogue, and please have a wonderful afternoon and rest of the day. Stay safe. Goodbye.